Actually, I would like to say, it's saying recording started. Hi everyone, it is Thursday by you, but it is not Thursday by me. Just letting you know, it's sort of like a disclaimer. This is pre-recorded, but isn't technology wonderful? I am on vacation. There's a wonderful backdrop behind me. But the show must go on. So, 102 FM had been so gracious to allow me to pre-record. And then, of course, you guys are going to watch it tomorrow while I am in the air. We have our first guest today, MP Anita Haynes, Alleyne. I'm not sure if she is there.
She's having some technical issues, so she will be logging back in.
Okay, well, no problem. So you know what? I actually have some things to discuss. So I'm going to discuss it all by myself. Y'all will have a little monologue before we're joined by the brilliant and beautiful Anita Haynes, Alleyne. I want to talk about something that's actually happening right now. So I'm experiencing it live. There is a mom who reached out to me very much desperate. Of course, you see things, and it happened actually when there was a young lady who was celebrating her birthday, and we heard stories where the guy came to her, chased on the highway, and beat her and whatnot, and she ended up dead. And so the mom reached out to me, and basically it's been a while. So she's had a restraining order. She's trying to go about it using the right channels. And she has a restraining order, actually, and it's been like a month, and the police have not served this restraining order. And it's very frustrating to me. And, now my husband is worried because I want to get involved. I want to call names. And he's saying, if this person is willing to beat his wife and allegedly chop his wife and all of that, who am I, right, to get involved? But I just feel for this lady because there's so much involved in this situation. So she actually pays the rent where he is at. And she's been, for fear of her life, forced to leave. She can't just ups and end the rent because it's tied to her employment, and her employer takes the rent out directly. And of course, no employer wants to get involved in all this bacchanal and drama, So she's afraid now, will she lose her job? Will she lose this apartment, then have to find something else? And at the end of the day, where is her protection? Where is the TTPS? Why hasn't the TTPS served this restraining order? Why haven't they gone in there and have him removed? What are our laws? How are we truly protecting our women? This and these are the issues. These are the real on the ground issues. So we can have the Minister of National Security talk. We can have the Commissioner of Police talk. We can have all these people speak and say nice things, and they'll come in Parliament or they'll have a media release and they'll say all these nice things, but then you will hear the story on the ground, and it's very, very different. MP Haynes, welcome. I'm not sure if you heard anything that I was saying before. I know it's outside of the realm of education, but I'm sure as an MP that you would come up with these cases. Basically what I was going through, I'm going through it right now. I'm here, I'm on vacation, and every time I get Wi-Fi, I'm messaging her. She is afraid for her life. Allegedly, she's been chopped. She had a restraining order. It's been a month. The restraining order has not been served. The TTPS, giving her a ring, what seems to be, just a bit around the bush. And she's paying the rent. She needs him out of the apartment. There's so much going on there. And the bottom line is, if she returns out of desperation, persons will say, well, why you return? Y'all need to leave. You need to this, you need to that. It's not, she's trying. And, I'm saying, why hasn't the TTPS served the restraining order, gotten them out of the apartment? And why aren't we working to keep our women safe? And so when you join, I was just saying that we stand in Parliament, we have the Minister of National Security, the Commissioner of Police, everybody stands and gives these wonderful speeches, puts out these wonderful media releases. But on the ground, it does not seem to be what we're hearing in these, well-written media releases. So, and then you logged on, and I was saying, I'm sure as an MP, you can relate to on the ground versus on paper, versus, this wonderful media release.
Absolutely. I mean, I've said it time and time again. It does not make sense that we do a certain level of work in Parliament and that citizens can't feel what the effect is. They bring out a lot of laws. For example, we've dealt with a lot of pieces of legislation, and I told them that paper does not solve crime, and that's the reality. Unless we are working to correct the justice system. So yes, you have in this case where an order has been served, and how is that translating into actual protection? How is it working in tandem with the TTPS, etc.? These are the things citizens want to see. They want to see responsiveness. They want to see the effect of the policy and not just hear about the policy itself. And until we can do that, I mean, I've said it time and time again, we aren't actually doing anything.
And I know I called you on to talk education, so permit me a little bit, because you are, to me, one of the more brilliant politicians out there, eloquent and beautiful, and so if I have you, I'm going to use you, I have you here for a little bit.
Yes.
So you talk about, policy, paper, those things won't stop crime. We need to see the effect of it. I have to say, I identify as UNC still. I know that you identify as UNC still. But there seems to be a bit of hopelessness. I certainly feel that way, just looking on. I'm not I don't have a seat at the table, but I'm just looking on as a regular citizen. Every Monday morning is something different. Somebody's leaving. You hear different things. And I'm not asking you to comment specifically in terms of who say, he say, she say, it's more about the issue. But you are hearing a lot of division. We're not hearing anything to show us that there's a real third party, there is a true alliance of any sort. We're not seeing any force as of right now that can compete against the PNM in an election that's 12, 13 months away. Is there any hope that you can offer us at this point? Because we know that the PNM cannot, they've had 9 years and they've not been able to. This is not about PNM, UNC or any of it. This is simple. As you say, we're looking on and we're not seeing the effect. We're not feeling safe. We're not feeling employed. We're not feeling an economy that's booming.
Well, here's the thing. This is the one thing I can say to the people of Trinidad and Tobago is when I entered politics, I did so in a manner to create a political atmosphere that discussed policy first, so that persons had something to pay attention to. And so that is how I tailor my arguments in Parliament. That is how I conduct myself in the media. And that's when people ask me questions, I give them direct answers in terms of what can be changed, what can be done differently. I subscribe firmly to the policies of the UNC, which is that people must be at the center of development. You cannot build a nation and leave people out of the equation, leave the human element of that outside of the equation. And so that is my political philosophy, is that national development starts with community development. It starts with building your communities, building your people. Strong, resilient communities will lead to a strong and resilient nation. And what we have been seeing is that persons are watching a political landscape where they feel left out of the conversation. They feel left out of the decision-making spaces. And that is creating an atmosphere where people choose to either withdraw from the discussions of political parties altogether or feel that sense of hopelessness that you've discussed. So the only advice I can give to the population of Trinidad and Tobago is do not disengage. Listen carefully and use your power as the decision makers, because ultimately politicians will tailor what they have to say to respond to you. Use your power to get the type of politics that you want. Use your voice and your advocacy to insist that the political parties put up the type of candidates that you know will work for national development. And if we as a nation do not recognize that the population must hold the power come 2025, we are setting ourselves up for failure. I intend to use my platform, my parliamentary time, to show citizens how they can wield their voting power in a way that gets politicians to respond to them, as opposed to you responding to the politician. And that's how we'll get the resilient communities and a nation that we hope to see. So that citizens must now really demand that the type of politics that we're seeing is just not what we'll respond to. And what we've seen in the past is that persons have withheld their vote. And so we've seen decreasing voter turnout. So the voter turnout at every election is just getting lower and lower. And what I'll say to citizens is that the politicians are clearly not responding to that, because we get the same politics. So now you have to come out in your numbers and show that there has to be a new direction, because we've tried, and it's not working. It's clear that it is not working. And I know you said 9 years of the PNM, but 9 years of this version of the PNM, but it has been the same type of politics, no matter which version of the PNM you get. It's the same type of politics. And so the problem that we face in Trinidad and Tobago is that mentally, the PNM seems to be the default political party, because they are a political institution. So people get this sense of security that maybe the stability will see us through. But the fact is, while they may have time on their side, the competence seems to be lacking. And we can't sacrifice what we need in terms of competent management of our nations, of our national affairs. And going forward, as an educated population, focus on what people are saying, on what they are doing, and then utilize your power as a citizen to get the type of politics that you would like to see.
You actually used the word there, stability. And of course, there's a famous quote, any alternative to the PNM is chaos. I personally, I've said it publicly, I don't trust coalition governments. I do think that they come about sort of like a marriage of convenience. And then once you kick out the PNM, the aim cannot only be kick out the PNM. After we get into government, we have to be able to serve the people. And you said that the PNM almost feels like a default government to citizens. But I'm sitting down here and I'm thinking and I'm watching and I'm going, but we seem to be proving these words correct, where it seems to be chaos. So I totally agree with you in terms of not voting. Not voting, which I have also said it publicly, come 2025, if this is it, I will be withholding my vote. It's not sustainable. I have said it's not a sustainable solution to withhold your vote. But in 2015, I didn't vote. In 2020, I got involved. I put my hat in the ring. I said I was going to be prepared to be the change. I am still here speaking, saying, guys, you have to vote. It's not sustainable to not vote. But here we are in 2024. Again, a general election is right there. And you're saying, come out in your numbers. First of all, I don't live in Tabaquite. I don't even know if Anita Haynes is going to be my candidate, even if I did live in Tabaquite. So, and I've said that. I've said, if you have a good candidate, forget the political party. I've said that. I've said that as a UNC candidate. I've said that. The first step is to force good candidates. So if you know you live in a PNM safe seat and the candidate has not performed, vote them out. If you know you live in a UNC safe seat and the candidate has not performed as an MP, vote them out. We need to send a message that we want good quality candidates. And if we have 41 politically mature candidates inside of the parliament, we'll have change regardless. But as I right now, Anita, I don't know that you'll be there. I don't know that Rushton will be there. I don't know that Dinesh will be there. And I made a post just yesterday. If you stack up the performing MPs, and I can go, so let's not take it to just Kamla, but I can go back to 2015 when Amory Brown in Diego Martin Central was a performing MP and he was removed for Darrell Smith. And I remember persons saying at the time, we don't want Darrell Smith. The arms of the party, of that party, did not want Darrell Smith. The activists, the PNM activists said they didn't want Darrell Smith. It didn't matter because in the end, Darrell Smith was put, Darrell Smith won. And I said, but you guys didn't want Darrell Smith. Yeah, but what are we going to do? Not vote for UN? You can't vote for UNC.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we are at the mercy of our political culture as it stands now. That's just the facts as they are. But as you said, you got involved. You saw something that was happening, and you got involved, as I did, as many others did. And there are many people looking on, and yourself, and people like me, and others who've come forward. And what we do, and how we conduct ourselves, and how we take our disappointment and our own disillusionment as persons who've entered the political landscape, but who are very real citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, who face a lot of the same challenges that other citizens of Trinidad and Tobago face. And I take that responsibility very seriously. And so, as you know, within this past year, I have spoken out about improvements in my political organization, which I think is a responsibility that is very important. That if you have a role, wherever you are, whatever organization you're a part of, you have a duty to make that organization better. And I will continue to do that work. I've also stated, I mean, when the conversation about the internal elections was started, there was a lot of discussion about what the consequences are. And I made it very clear then, and that stays true today, that equally there are consequences for inaction. And having not spoken up, having not said anything, would mean that I have agreed that the politics that we are facing as Trinidad and Tobago today overall is good. Now, my issues with the PNM management has been well documented, at least since 2017. So that cannot be, in question, or ought not to be in question. I raised the issue with how they have treated the affairs of the country, the manner in which they manage, the manner in which they give us excuses. I've stated that by and large, what they've presented as a resource problem, a question of money, is not the case because they've been spending. So the question has to be management. So those things are well documented. But similarly, I cannot sit as a member of the UNC and see where improvements can be made. And these are not personal improvements alone. It's a question of institutional strengthening. It's a question on strategic strengthening. How are we preparing? What are we presenting to the population? And those things remain important. And so now, as it stands, whether or not I am a candidate in the next general election does not minimize or amplify my voice, in my opinion, because I have a platform. And I will use my platform to the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago, which was the only reason I got involved in national politics anyway. No other reason than to create the type of Trinidad and Tobago that I hope to see for the future generation.
Well, Anita, I hope that you continue to be strengthened. Let's move on to education.
Yes.
You are officially the shadow of education for the opposition. We've seen low CSEC results, we've seen low SCA results, and they blame COVID for that. Now we're seeing low CSEC results. There's no COVID to be blamed. There's protests from tutor we see once again schools about to be open and the buildings aren't where they should be in terms of maintenance. And of course, I continue to say that I think the education system is a failure, right? Talk to me as a shadow of education. Floor is yours.
Yes, so I mean, in the first step, in the very first instance, infrastructure being our basics, you understand that in order to create a learning environment that can be productive, you have to have at least comfortable and safe accommodations, right? That does not take any great intellectual thought. It doesn't take up, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that. And year after year, budget after budget, July, August vacation coming and going, we get the same issues. Not utilizing the time that students are on vacation to optimize their learning spaces. And so, on the first instance, I will be raising a question in Parliament to find out how much was spent, which schools benefited from, the any upgrades to their infrastructure over the telling you we see it 20 million spent, 45 million spent, and then you ask the schools if their situation has been improved. And last year September, so running up on a year now, I had a protest at the Gasparillo Government Secondary School. I asked the question as an urgent question in Parliament, and the minister told me that the works were completed. Mind you, I had left the school that morning so that I had seen for myself that the works were not completed. And so that is the type of thing that we've been seeing, where there's a commitment to a PR spin as opposed to a commitment to actual proper management. And so on that first instance, we're looking at infrastructure. And I've always stated that if you are incapable of solving small problems, it's going to be very difficult for you to solve the more complicated problems, like our decreasing SEA results, our CSEC results. When they present the SEA results in the first instance, we see a number of students who scored below 30%. And I keep making the point that it's not just about the exam and what your accomplishment was in the exam. It's about your competency. The question you have to ask yourself is that at scoring at 30%, are those students attaining the level of competence required to be successful in a secondary education? And while we are looking at that issue, 30%, that's not 50%, that's not the half mark, that's 30%. That is now a metric that we're measuring. That means that these students, by the exam measure, we are being told that they are unprepared for a secondary education. So what did the ministry do? After the fact, they put in place the remedial vacation classes, vacation revision classes. These are voluntary classes. Students, they have to make themselves available. Last year, they were very undersubscribed. I will get the numbers when we return to Parliament, because the ministry is not very forthcoming with numbers. So when we get the numbers, we'll find out whether or not students attended these vacation revision classes. But at the secondary school level, by and large, some of these secondary schools are getting higher numbers of the students who scored below 30%. Are those schools, if you know that within a school placement, within a secondary school placement, that the Form 1 teachers will be facing students who have not shown or demonstrated by the examination that they are prepared for a secondary school education, are you equipping that school with school support officers, with guidance counselors, with teachers who are prepared, trained to teach students who require an extra level of attention? If you aren't doing that, you're setting those schools up for a more difficult time. So, the ministry needs to use its management function, its executive management function, to create an optimum learning environment. What you're seeing is that they're funneling students through the system, just getting them through the system and giving us passes, grades. And if there is a 0.3% difference, counting it as a success, or if there's a 0.3% decrease, or whatever, they're going to say, well, it's a minimal decrease. But when you're dealing with education, you have to get away from the numbers and realize that these are human beings. These are young people. This is the next generation of Trinidadians and Tobagonians. These are the people that we will depend on to build our nation. And if you are treating people as just numbers and statistics, that is what we're going to end up right where we are, or worse off. And so I have continued to urge the ministry to look at a holistic approach to education, to move away from the excuses, look at ensuring at the early childhood spaces that there's some level of psychometric testing done so that you can assess what types of needs the students are going into the school system, if you require extra attention, where your learning abilities are, and so that you get into the system and you're equipped for a certain level of success. Similarly, focus on teacher training, continuous training for teachers, so that they are, again, given the best chance of success. And once we do that, we will see an improved education sector. But when we continue to make excuses, we're going to continue to see exactly what is going on right now.
So you think that I guess it's a politics by PR almost.
Basically.
At least that's what I'm getting from you.
No, because I mean, you see it time and time again. If you look at how the exam results are phrased, they are phrased always in a way whether or not they will face any sort of critique, or what would the conversation be like. And there's no sense of urgency. You don't get the sense of that there's a need to course correct. When we talk about student accomplishment and student development, you don't get the sense that the ministry understands that each number that you're seeing there represents a person, that it represents a human being that really is within our education system. But while at this point their success is dependent on our inputs, the policymakers' inputs, what the Ministry of Education is doing, what the teaching service is doing, etc., that ultimately the nation's success depends on how well we raise this next generation. And so it must go hand in hand. And if we fail now, we fail our future selves.
I have two questions for you. One on education, one a little bit controversial. If you were the Minister of Education in the morning, what would you do?
In the morning?
To bring the change that you want to see.
Well, like I said, I'll start at the beginning. The Ministry of Education gets about a $5 billion budget. There's a certain level of amount of money that is required for recurrent expenditure. So you're looking at salaries, etc., upkeep. And you have to look at what your money is being spent on. Are we utilizing our money to optimize the system? So again, I would ensure that the school repairs are timely, that we do not allow problems to become big and expensive problems, but they're fixed fairly quickly. You create a safe, secure, comfortable learning environment. You ensure that all schools, that the teachers benefit from the highest levels training, so that you create that schedule or roster system so that teachers are, over the vacation period, allowed to benefit from training that will look at the newest techniques in education, in how to optimize your skill set as an educator, how to reach more students, etc. I would immediately introduce psychometric testing at the early childhood stages, so that we understand we're utilizing the knowledge that we have now. In 2024, we understand that not all students are the same type of learner, that they require certain, that how you learn is different. And so we implement that in the education system. And so that we aren't trying to teach all students in the same blanket way, and we give them the chances for success that we can. Again, we will look at the students. I would look at the student support services, ensure that they have the resources required to function properly. Right now, the guidance counselors, again, their ratio is skewed not for success. There are far too few guidance counselors for the students required. And so I would increase those. And then at the curriculum level, start to introduce things like conflict management, start to introduce questions on how do you deal with your emotions, anger management, etc. And those are the things I'll put in place to treat with school violence and to hopefully reduce over time the cases of school violence, because we do have an anger management and conflict resolution problem, and we aren't utilizing the curriculum to try to treat with that problem. We're only utilizing force at the end level. So you're looking at suspensions, expulsion, police in schools, but you aren't teaching, at the end of the day, they are children. You aren't teaching them how to cope. And until you do that, you're always going to be at the tail end of the problem. So those would be some of the things that, I would have to divide into short term, medium, and long term. What can be done immediately, we would do. What can be done over 3 months. But again, in the same management style that I have now, I will remain accessible and available to answer questions and give updates, because that's part of the problem that we face. We have an education minister too, as a matter of fact. And getting data, getting the details is like pulling teeth. That information is not yours, it's not a secret, it belongs to the nation. Whether things are going well, whether you need more time, what is required, you have to keep the nation informed. And that information then will allow persons to make informed decisions going into, whether it be an election season or how you rationalize what is going on in the country. That remains an important part of being a policymaker to me. Being accessible and being able to give the information, being accountable to the people who you work for.
Okay, so I think technology is wonderful. We get to be interviewed, from different places. But of course, it means that there is some challenges. So I think you've answered the first question. The last one, just before I bring in my second guest and I say goodbye and thank you to you, I'm going to ask you the controversial one so that you can answer quickly or bow out. You can plead the. We've seen in the news on social media that there is yet another third party that has been formed. I'm not sure why the news is carrying it as UNC members, former UNC members. I guess based on just the writing of it and whatnot. What I find interesting is that the name of it is Up TT. I'm not sure what they say it's called, but I know that United Patriots, so it's quite similar to that the name of the 5 MPs or the slate that would have gone up, which you were a part of, for the NATEX election. Do you want to comment? A short comment. Do you know anything about it?
I will say this. I find it very funny. I mean, I saw it carried in the news media, in traditional news media. And I will urge, I think we've all gotten accustomed to social media, and you have to be very careful taking reports from pages that aren't associated to real people. And so you don't have anybody to answer that question, because where it originated from is from a kind of nameless, faceless space. And so what I will say is that the interest generated has been interesting. It means that people are looking on and they are looking closely at our political landscape, and I want to encourage them to continue to do so.
So, I mean, isn't there a way? I don't know. Because I saw it while on vacation. So I thought to myself, surely there must be a way, the same way you could go and find out who owns a company. Surely there must be a way to find out who registered the political party. No?
Well, that's if a political party has been registered. And again, it really is up to the news media to do their due diligence and not do, a version of tabloid reporting. But again, I will say that the interest generated, not necessarily by the media, but by persons who have been reaching out to find out what does it mean, if it means anything at all. I think that Trinidad and Tobago can benefit from a population that is interested in what politics can look like in the future.
Well, thank you very much, Andy Haynes. It has been a pleasure as always. Thank you for taking time out, because I know Parliament isn't sitting, and I think that your mom is here.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking time out to sit with us and to continue to serve the people and fight for that change, that growth in our political landscape. I really do appreciate it.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Thank you for having me, and continue to do the work that you're doing. I mean, all voices are very important as we build Trinidad and Tobago.
Will do. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, so we're going to have a veteran journalist. I think actually Mr. Ali still writes. So, he brings a lot of knowledge and historical knowledge. Because, I know persons are tired of speaking politics, tired of having these conversations. And there are persons who've been having the conversations. They themselves are tired of having the conversations, because you kind of feel we've been here before, we've tried this before. But I guess I always go back to things like slavery, independence, and all these different watershed moments. We have to fight. We have to keep trying. We can't give up. We can't give up the first time. Even I look at Carnival and Camberley riots. You cannot give up even if blood is shed. You have to keep pressing and keep pushing. And look back, and the trees that the seeds that we plant today, we will not have the shade of that tree, because it just takes that long. So we're gonna I think Mr. Ali is backstage. Is Mr. Ali backstage? Can he join the conversation?
Hi, Marsha. No, he has to log back in.
Hi.
He logged out and he has to log back.
Okay, he has to log back in. Yeah. Okay. Let me message. The studio is saying you have to log back in. Okay, so I've sent a message. And just like we did the first time when we waited for MPs, I would actually speak on two other issues. Because issues happen daily, right? And just now, let me make sure I took a screenshot of it to make sure I have his name correct. So it appears as though the media just calls him Akeem Stewart, but I hope I don't mess up the pronunciation of his name, because I'm seeing that he is registered as Wimana Akeem Stewart. So he is throwing the men's discus throw F64 at the Paralympics. And so we want to wish him all the best. Trinidad and Tobago, we're behind you, we're supporting you. Win, lose, or draw, you're ours, and we loved you, and we're supporting you. To even reach the Olympics, is such a feat. And I think the Paralympics for me feels even more special, because, some of us, even if we just bounce our toe, or, you go down in age and you think, oh gosh, I can't do this and I can't do that. So these athletes, they overcome the mental challenge of having some version of a disability, and to then compete at, I think, a level higher than some persons who don't have any disabilities. And so I just wanted to take a moment to, publicly say we are supporting you, Mr. Stewart. Win, lose, or draw, you're Trinity, and we love you, and we are, supporting you 100%. I hope that you've gotten the financial support that you need. And secondly, I was having a conversation at with the girl that did my nails. And again, she expressed a sense of hopelessness, because she was looking on and she just didn't know. She said, no one seems to be a viable option for her. And that is something that we hear constantly. We don't have a viable option. So like many of us, we've said that if this is what we see, we're not going to vote. And she's spoken about not voting before. I asked her about 2020, and for her, she had given me what I heard constantly. And I said that was the decision that I was not prepared to go back again. I went for general elections, I went in the local government elections, and I said, I'm not prepared to go back again while leadership is the way that it is, while the party is being run the way that it is being run. And again, nothing personal. But the sacrifice, persons on the outside will say, well, they gave you this opportunity. First of all, in Diego Martin West, there is nobody putting up their name. It's not a long line of screening. Nobody's is fighting to run in Diego Martin West. Especially, not just that it's a PNM safe seat, but the fact that it's held by the Prime Minister. So it's a very challenging seat to raise funds for, to raise, support for. And hi, Mr. Ali. While we were waiting, I just said I was gonna just talk to the audience, so they wouldn't have the dead air. And I know it's something that you can join in. And I was just speaking to, my decision to not run again, at least with the current landscape and leadership as it is. So, I was just giving them a little bit of a conversation that I had with someone. And I said, while I was walking in 2020 and in 2023, as so general elections and local government elections, all I heard was, Marsha, we love you, but I can't vote for you because of Kamala. I can't vote for you because of Kamala. And even in local government elections, I said, well, Kamala has nothing to do with it. It's local government. You're voting for Marsha. And I was having that conversation, and when I explained it to her, and it was like a light bulb went off, and I said, yes, because at the end of the day, if we commit to voting for the best candidate, forget the political leader for a moment and vote for the best candidate that's on your ballot. The first thing, and I just had MP Haynes on, who spoke about, growing up, maturing our politics, demanding from our political parties better candidates. And the only way that we can demand better candidates is if we reject a poor candidate, even in a safe seat. So if you, and I use Daryl Smith and Amory Brown because I didn't want to make it out to be, a Kamala bashing session or a UNC bashing session. But in 2015, when Amory Brown was there, I said to PNM members at that time, if you want Amory Brown, if you reject Daryl Smith, then why are you going to vote for Daryl Smith? And, the response was, well, we have to vote for PNM. And I thought that is a place where we can change. That's one small space. Anita spoke about strong communities. If you build strong communities, then you will build a strong country. So you start small. And, us as citizens, look at the candidates in front of you. We're on the home stretch. We're just about 13, maybe just 12 months, who knows, even less. So we're on the home stretch. We are preparing for general elections. And I really feel strongly about it. I know that PNM would have named some of their candidates. And I don't want to take away from you, Mr. Ali, because I know that you are so much better to speak on these topics than I am. But as a former candidate, I want to plead with Trinidad and Tobago that the first step is to demand a good candidate. If the candidate put forward time after time after time is not someone that will serve you well, in some cases we have persons, and I always say, we can blame nobody but Diego Martin West for Keith Rowley becoming the Prime Minister, because you've had, 4 or 5 elections to vote him out. If he's not an MP, he cannot become a Prime Minister. If we get to know the candidates, get to know the persons that are being put forward, and vote for the best candidate, then what we can be sure of is that we'll have 41 mature politicians inside of Parliament, and maybe we'll get somewhere. Maybe we will see, because persons talk about, the 5 MPs in UNC that would have spoken out, and I think that that's good for democracy. And Mr. Ali, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I would have liked to see persons like Amy Brown, persons like Penelope Beckles speak out against the PNM, persons like Brian Manning. What I want to see is a change from this cult behavior, this constant towing of the line. And if you know something's happening internally, the same way that we are citizens first and we challenge the government, we must be citizens first and challenge internally. And these are the kinds of candidates that I think we should actually be wanting to represent us. Candidates that we know have a backbone, candidates who will say enough is enough internally or externally or otherwise, who can speak up and who have, they have the backbone to speak up. So I'm going to stop now that Mr. Ali is here. Thank you, Mr. Ali, for joining us. All right, you're hearing me, yes?
Very well, very well. But thank you, Marsha. Thank you for having me. Good day to you and your many viewers and listeners. Thank you very much. It's good to be on this frequency. I wish to say hello to my friends and colleagues there, most notably Paul Richards. It's good to be with you. I've heard what you said. That is a kind of idealism I had when I was a younger person too. Many years ago, Dr. Williams said I could put a donkey in a Balize tie and he would win. And to be fair, other parties have not said the converse of that, but we are in what the Americans call identity politics, which is really ethnic politics. And that is not going to change. There were times when we felt they were changing with the NAR, and then that broke apart because the leadership didn't handle it well. And there were other times when we thought we got close to it. In my view, watching this society, it disturbs me a lot how much identity politics has returned to us, which is really code word for race. And that is a discussion I really don't like to take part in because I've heard that since I was a little boy, and that has not changed, and I don't see it changing. It calls for enlightened and prolonged leadership, and enough on that. I could, because I could discuss it at long length, and I'll tell you this, just because I prefer, as I've been telling you before, I prefer to discuss bread and butter issues, and I think we have some critical issues to talk about. But just let me say this one thing. Many years ago, Lloyd Best, that great Caribbean thinker, said Trinidad and Tobago has 9 tribes. Since then, we probably have more because you have the LGBTQ and so on and so forth. And to manage this country, you have to be able to appeal to everyone. Mr. Pandey used to say Trinidad is the only country in which everybody feels alienated. Mr. Pandey also said the problem in Trinidad is not race, but class. So nobody feels a sense of belonging. People feel the 1% has stolen the country. And in fact, I have been talking a lot about the wealth gap. The rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. And I'm not just been saying that, I've been quoting these statistics. So there's that. There's what Mr. Best used to call the Garveyites, Marcus Garveyites, which are the Rastas, the inner city people, the urban Indians, the middle class Indians. Are different from the rural Indians. And you see the politics while on that I don't want to get into this discussion, but I find myself going a little bit into the rabbit hole. But let me say this. You saw the politics that Dr. Rowley has played with Carlisle Kangaloo, bringing her as president of the country, and that has appeased the Presbyterians. As the middle class, the so-called moneyed Indians are distinct from the rural Indians. Now we see Dr. Yunus Ibrahim for Sama Bharat area, and that appeases the Islamic community. You see Rishi Sukai for Chaguanas East, that's the middle class East Indians and so on. So it's a very diverse country, and people like to see in office people who look like them, talk like them, behave like them, and so on. And it happens around the world. We see what's happened with Trump and so on and so forth. You see this great euphoria, the sugar rush over Kamala Harris, and partly, and only partly, because she looks like a lot of people who've been out of office for a long time. But Marsha, if you would allow me, I think.
Okay, just before, because I know you want to talk about bread and butter issues, right? But doesn't that, I feel as though we feel hopeless because we're talking about it. We're saying that there is a problem. I started the show actually talking about a case that I'm working with right now with domestic violence. It's on the ground, it's tangible, it's something that I can touch and taste and feel. So when you say to me all these politics and policies, and you say all of this, and you say all of this, and you put out all these media releases, I'm saying to you, but I am on the ground and I'm feeling it and I know it. And similar to you, you're
Yeah, but
saying,
Marsha,
you're
if I
speaking
could
about
say
it,
this.
you're collecting data. What's the solution?
All right, but Marsha, if I could say this, so I heard you say, if I heard you well, that we are hopeless. We are not hopeless. If we are, we made ourselves that way. I have been around a long, long time. There was a time in Dr. Williams's tenure when there was an apathy in the country and people were afraid to talk. In fact, there was a common rumor if you talk out, they will do a tax audit on you and they will harass you and you won't get foreign exchange and so on and so forth. Um, Now we've gone full circle, and there are large sections of the community business chamber doesn't speak out on crime. Now and then they issue a tepid statement. Where is the civil society on all these issues? We have a major crisis with mental health in this country. We have a huge crisis with malnutrition, and these are serious things. The government has just set up a committee on food prices. That's because their survey has shown them that's a number one electoral issue. But where were they when the cost of food staples went up 60% over the last few years? Where were they when the cost of food importation went up from $4 billion to $7.3 billion? And who imports the food? Where were they when 74,000 acres of carrying land, a lot of them given away to political associates to build houses, when there are franchise stores and shopping malls on former carrying land? These are arable lands, Marsha. Instead of growing food, and we have qualified farmers in this country, we have deep roots in agrarian culture, and you talk to a lot of these people, it is a long-standing generational skill that they've developed from their families. And we took those lands, we gave it, and I don't want to call the name of these franchise stores, you know what they are. You drive down and you see warehouses, you see a lot of posh homes and so. That's where we could grow food on the downflow from the northern range of the central range near our three lagoons and so on and so forth. And we are putting down commercial and industrial properties there, and we spend $7.3 billion on food. Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, President of Guyana, Dr. Irfan Ali, have set up something. They've led the process of a CARICOM food plan to reduce food imports by a certain amount. Ask what have we done? We continue to import food. So how could we determine if we are importing food from the other side of the world? We are victims of everything: shipping crisis, cost of labor, strikes, and so on. That's why our food prices are going up all the time. Marsha, we have a crisis. This is why I prefer to talk on these issues. We have a crisis where mothers can't feed their families. We have a huge on. You know why the CSO says that we have low unemployment? Because a lot of people have taken themselves out of the employment. There's a term they use. They're not seeking jobs, right? And then we have a lot of people in the informal sector. They're selling burgers and doubles and so on, and they are victims of crime. We have people who operate in small business, small and medium-sized businesses. They're facing an extortion racket. There are people who are closing down, and when they go abroad, they take finance, they take brain drain, they take our money we spend on the education, and they're going to build another society. Those are among the issues, and I could reel out many others, right? In fact, the country is now being overwhelmed once more by the Venezuelan migrants, illegal migrants coming in from Cedros to um, from Erin to Cedros. So those ports remain very porous, and we are not doing anything. Right? If you read what the authorities are saying, you read the Miami Herald and Washington Post, CNN, and New York Times, and it said there's a new flood. Now, most are going to North America, but in Panama, they're blocking what they call the Darien Strait, so it's difficult to go there. In Chile, Peru, Brazil, Bolivia, they're blocking you a whole lot. So, what's the easiest port of call? Trinidad. There is a it has been, and everything I say here can be substantiated. I invite people to go and Google it and check. There is a criminal organization in Venezuela called, and I'm going to take my time and say it, so anybody wants to Google it and double check the fact, called TREN, Tren de Aragua, ARAGUA, determined to be Venezuela's worst criminal organization. 2 years ago, the CARICOM secretariat told um, countries, including Trinidad and Tobago, that they're setting up routes. They are involved in mercenary activities in Trinidad and Tobago. Go and check it. President Biden has just determined that they are becoming, and his words, or the State Department words, an emergent threat. So they could come in here, and maybe they have, commit crimes and go. Or borders being as porous as they are, put pressure on who? On the education system, healthcare system, public transportation, you name it. And I could go on and on. We have these crises, Marsha. And that's why I'm reluctant to talk about. Say, I am saying that the country has become a nation of sheep once more. During Dr. Williams' time, people were afraid. From 1971 to 1976, there was no opposition until two people broke away and so on. Mr. Pandey gave hope because he spoke all the way and he was fearless. And in Labour, we had people like George Weeks and Clive Nunes and Joe Young and Rafik Shah, the height of his game and so on. And people felt as if Labour is dead now, civil society doesn't speak, and there are all these issues. And there are reports that are coming out that substantiate what I'm saying. UNICEF is talking about the malnutrition. We have a malnutrition issue. The other day, I moderated an event, and a lady came up with tears in her eyes and said, "My husband has deep problems with depression and anxiety." And I said, "The entire family." There is that issue because malnutrition is one. It's crime. People go to bed. Not everybody could put up security bars and so on. And even those who could, they're fearful that the vehicle will be broken into. And so there are a lot of these crimes taking place, but they don't, they just have run the criminals. And we hear 15 and 17-year-olds and so on. What about the Americans have set up they have 5 agencies at their operations here that are available to assist us. In February this year, U.S. State Department Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and top level people called in our Prime Minister and our Minister of Foreign Affairs and said, "Listen, you all have criminal organizations and carrying out all these crimes in your country and so on. There's a strong-willed, determined, committed lady called Candice Bond, who is the U.S. Ambassador to Port of Spain, and she's offering to assist. What have we done to protect us against drug running, gun running, human trafficking? Those are the issues that animate me, as you may well see. All right, those are the things. So until we could get people come out of their safety zone, I saw a guy saying, a guy I read on social media. He said the issue with crime really in this country is that Kamala really never supported legislation, and there are people who really believe that. There are people who really believe it. So those people are seeking any avenue, any opportunity. Clearly, they're wearing the political blinkers. Those circumstances, in my view, can't be changed. But I think there are a lot of middle of the road people, and those are the people must be encouraged to speak out on issues fearlessly. I'm not seeing that, and I'm seeing a lot of social issues. I'm seeing critical issues of people not being safe, cost of living going up, security issues. All those attendant problems are, to me, the critical issues of Trinidad and Tobago as we head to a general election. And the indications are, Marsha, that we're going to the polls earlier rather than later for a number of reasons, right? And I've not gotten yet. Just let me say this, because I know you want to ask me some questions, but we are heading to, I was around it, we are heading to what took place under the George Chambers era. If you look at where we have been borrowing. Our debt to GDP is the highest it's been since the 1980s. All right, you know what is happening with energy prices and energy production. We have not diversified the country, and I've heard several prime ministers speak about diversification, none of which has taken place. What do we do post-election? Apart from property tax, electricity and water rates going up and so on, how do they fund the budget? We've had 8 out of the last 9 budgets have been deficit budget. You know what Mr. Chambers did? he taxed everything that was moving and shaking. If you were leaving the country, he taxed you an exit tax. He taxed what was later called nuisance taxes. So we public officers have gotten 4% increase to cover almost 10 years. The quality of our lives have deteriorated. The Prime Minister said that's not a problem because there was some reggae concert the other day and that was filled. Nobody took him on. When the social activists on the ground, they said, this lady can't feed her children. Where the media? What were the media? Why no media investigation? When I was in the weekly press, that's how we cut our teeth. We used to go and tell people stories. The media not telling people stories. People who, you saw Kamala Harris at a convention bring on people to say, my family were victims of crime. Now, we may not want to identify people here because of, we could block their faces and so tell people stories. There's a lot of suffering in the country, but that goes on to the issue of ownership of media and so on. So I'm probably getting into a deep end here, and I guess you have some questions you want to raise.
No. I do want one question, because you asked, and I'm grateful for anybody that speaks out. I really am, because I agree that we are behaving like sheep. We're murmuring in the corner, and I get fed up. I know when persons message me and they message almost like they're bad talking the government, I said, well, what you planning to do about it? Message me. I know you're preaching to the choir. So after we speak out, what's next?
Well,
and that is where that's what I want to sort of get your. I want you to speak out. I want persons to really understand. But after we understand just how bad it is, I don't think the country is disagreeing. I don't think the average citizen, other than your diehard PNM, but even diehard PNM, they're murmuring because they are struggling. I think the issue is, and you can correct me, and I know you don't want to discuss identity politics, but at the end of the day, when we go to the polls, we have to vote for someone, for something, and I can say how I feel. Right now, I do not feel like there is anyone for me to vote for. So I know PNM is bad. I know that the country, I said it in 2020, we cannot survive a second term of PNM. God help us for a third term. I know we are in a crisis, and you can give us the details, which hopefully people will listen to. But what is the solution? So we've identified that we are in a crisis. We have the statistics, we have the facts. As I said, I don't think, Mr. Ali, that there is anybody who disagrees with you that we're in a crisis, other than your small handful of real PNM blind loyalists. What is our solution? What would you like to see from us?
Okay,
I'm here. You're my mentor. Tell me, what do you want to see from me, the younger generation?
There's a huge missing link between the disaffection and the hurt being felt by the people and what's happening on the corridors of power. And as the communication is, I look at social media and it's extremely boring. To me, everybody's saying the same thing, and a lot of simple platitudes don't make any sense, and it really doesn't stir thought. Some of what I read from big name people in society, and there's so many issues. So nobody's getting under the figures. Everybody is getting into whimsical issues and character assassination and so on. The work is not being done to break out the facts to the people, how it is. The traditional media has died. Right? We get caught up in esoteric things. When people ask me for the coat of arms, I say, well, there's really not an issue. The issue is the cost of living. The issue. I saw the Guardian newspaper of Britain write about that. They talk about, and then they quoted people in Woodford Square. The Guardian of Britain write about it a few days ago, and they said the people in Woodford Square were saying our issues are social and economic issues, crime, and so on. But we've gone off on a tangent, and the prime minister may be a very weak prime minister and ineffective, an incompetent prime minister, but he consumes all the oxygen in the room. As a communicator, he's a dramatic communicator. He controls the narrative. So here's where you have. Consider this. The country is in a bad state economically and socially, and the man who is head of that controls the national narrative. Something has to be wrong along the route, right? What is wrong? How come the man who is in charge of the country and the country has fallen into this state of collapse, he still dictates the national message? And you have to ask why. And the answers are very evident. And not enough work is being done to break out the issues, to explain to people. And that is the responsibility of those who care about the country, those who want to remove the country, the government, those who are involved in various things. And I'm not just in the political opposition. Labor has died. It's very sad. I used to be a labor and industrial reporter, and I covered Panday and Weeks and all of them. And to see what labor has become a putty now in the hands of the administration. They made a cardinal error in 2010 in supporting the PNM because the PNM has always divided and ruled the labor movement. Academia doesn't speak, the university doesn't speak. It's from the university that McCandle Dagger came out, and Kafra Kamban. How come we don't care Kafra Kamban about the state of the people he represents economically and socially? Where are the other stakeholders in the country? Youths feel very disaffected. You talk to young people and nobody wants to hear about what the leaders say. Nobody relates to them. So you look at all the various stakeholders in the country. You trash them out. Whether it's civil society, long term, you have all these civil society groups. The IRO has died, and that was religion, faith based. I see the Archbishop. I didn't hear all of it, but he talked about a poverty issue and commend him for that. But where are the other people who are involved? And there are a lot of faith-based organizations who are helping poor people, all right? And a few names coming to mind. No, there's a Catholic organization, and they do a lot of work. There's a Hindu organization, and there are several others. I wish I could remember the names now because they do a tremendous lot of work among the poor and the dispossessed in the country and other faith organizations. I want to say that, and so on. How come we don't hear a national crusade on those issues? So I'm saying that there are stakeholders, not just the political opposition. Political opposition, yes, but there are others. Long-term universities is to be a beehive of people. Labor is the agriculturalists and so on. I remember when Mr. Pandey and Mr. Weeks and that era called rally, whether it was Skinner Park or Woodford Square and so on. Tens of thousands of people came out and they spoke and they took on Dr. Williams. In 1975, they led a march that Dr. Williams got the police commissioner to tear gas the people and so on. And I'm not saying that you do anything illegal, but I'm saying that the country is in a state of economic and social war on one issue or the other. And those issues have to be carefully explained. And I'm saying there's a major gulf in the issue of communication. And I'm saying that all the stakeholders have gone silent on that. And while that is happening, the circumstances in the country are only getting worse.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you a little bit because I know that you're saying that the stakeholders have gone silent. You're speaking about communication, but we are in the era of communication. This is not where TTT is all we can control. So, years ago, the prime minister would speak. You put it in the newspaper, and that's the information. We are in an era where I can pick up my phone, I can do this, I can say a message, and I can get it out there. I just pulled up Certified Samson. That's just one influencer in Trinidad and Tobago, right? He does videos, 1.3 million followers. I do not know of any political commentators that have a big, it's just some of the political commentators that I know. If I pull them up on TikTok, right, thus far, let me see. So I'm going to pull up my TikTok, right, because I have what would be considered the biggest following in that, in just that sort of political commentary. I have 40,000 followers, right? I'm going to pull up Stefan Rees. I know Stefan has less.
Yeah, but the issue there, Marsha, I know where you're going with it.
So yeah, but we cannot. The bottom line is the country, and Anita would have spoken about that. Anita spoke about that actually, even at the BBC conversations. Politicians are going to give you what you want to hear. The media houses have to sell ads. They have to have followings. So you have persons who are speaking. I guarantee you, I am going to challenge you. We have TikTok has a limit on the amount of time that you can post. Twitter, they have a limit on the number of words because this generation does not have the attention span for information. So we have to find ways, and I have really, really tried to find ways to get the information, to spoon feed the information into this generation so that they can care.
Well, Marsha,
how do we get the information out? You're saying we're not speaking, but there are persons who are speaking, but those videos don't go live, they don't go viral until they cuss and carry on.
Yeah, well, okay, let me say a few things. And let me start by saying Twitter, now called X, Elon Musk himself interviewed Trump last week, had 75 million, well, of course, in the US, live viewers and millions after that. And the algorithms permit you to attract large audiences. I look at some of the, I have to tell you that when I look at TikTok, I really try to be entertained and so on. But if we have to, you're absolutely right. If we have to reach youths now, and communication is different from when I started in the newspaper business many years ago. I think it has a lot to do with what we tell the people. We're not doing the work. For example, if President Trump, ex-President Trump is speaking now, the New York Times and CNN, Washington Post and so on will fact check him live. Prime Minister Rowley is holding a press conference today. They will ask one or two weak-kneed little questions because they're all afraid, again, both by the man and by the Honorable Prime Minister. And refer to my earlier point that he leads a government that has led us into all these issues, and he controls the national narrative. Ask why. Ask why. Right? You in communications also. But
but he doesn't give an opportunity to be questioned. He doesn't.
No, well, there are ways to deal with that. There are many. No, I don't think so. Ask him hard questions, and if he responds in a certain way,
but persons have tried, and he shuts it down.
No, the
we
media
can't get. You think the political leader of the UNC is going to answer my hard questions? I have reached out to Haynes. They do not answer the hard questions. They don't.
You see, no, listen. I'm not suggesting that all the blame and the responsibility lies with the communicators. I know they could reach only so far. But if you have to inform, I was going to say agitate, maybe I should say agitate people, but certainly inform people. You have to continuously do the work. You have to do the work on an ongoing basis. You have to say, all right, the Prime Minister held a press conference today. He discussed 5 issues, but here are 8 important things he did not discuss. Here are 3 errors in fact in what he's and he controls the news cycle, Marsha. As a communications person, I look at this. He controls the news cycle moves faster than it used to go. Communications has evolved. I don't want to get into talk more communications here, but which I could. Communications has evolved, but he controls the news cycle. The Prime Minister administration has not handled the issues of the day competently, but he has effectively handled the communications in the country because of his personality, because of his ability to speak, and so on. He controls that narrative to the point where people are overwhelmed and intimidated by him. But those things don't change the cold facts. And what needs to be done are more anecdotal evidence of how people are suffering. These are the and so on. Those are the things. I remember when Mr. Pandey fought in 2000 after he got into government in 1995, and in the year 2000, James Carville, the great James Carville, call him the raging. He's still around. I still see him on CNN. He was the man who properly advised Bill Clinton to stick to the message of the economy, and that adage came, it's the economy, stupid. and he focused on the economy. He came and he advised Mr. Pandey, stick to issues, Mr. Pandey. And he stuck, when the meetings finished at night, Mr. Pandey had to sit and talk with him about where he went right and where he went wrong. Stick to message. And they brought people and told people stories. That is what has to be done, Marsha. You have to get, you see all this thing with talking heads and so on? That's good. You have to tell people stories. You have to move people emotionally. I tell people, maybe because I get a little older, I reflect on my career now. I sold newspaper, edited newspapers that sold 100,000 copies. Now, that can't sell now with all this mass media and so on, social media. But you know, we did that. We went and told people.
Okay, you're speaking 100,000 copies, right? Okay, so we can have 100,000 views, but I have shown it, I have demonstrated it. 100,000 views? You had to be cussing and carrying on and getting on like a clown. That's how it works. I've had 100,000 views on videos. You know when Keith Rowley locked me outside. Well, let me just say Keith Rowley locked me outside. When I was locked outside of inside Woodford Square, and I was told that I couldn't protest and whatnot. I have the TTPS in court and whatever going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
That video went viral because people, and whoever captured me, it looked like a behind bars or some random thing. That video went viral. When I speak, I can see it. I can look at when I get 100,000 views, when I get 5,000 views, when I get 300 views. The more data you put, the more facts you put, the more sober-minded and controlled you appear to be. They don't want that. They don't. They don't. But they will tune in. They will tune in to political leaders who cuss and carry on and talk about files and talk about this. And none of that information is substantiated. None of it. But they love it. They love the bacchanal. Certified Samson. It's a comedy. It's comedy. I see people talking about some travel blogger and some X-rated video. It's frustrating. Kyle Taklal Singh was on my show. He made some points about the coat of arms and we moved on, right? He spoke to the process XYZ and I said he spoke about crime and legislation and his willingness. So we had solutions, a sound show. But before that, after that, we had Sarah Jane Waddle. Again, she was speaking on issues. She made some comments on the coat of arms. A few seconds. Which clip you think went viral?
Okay, I hear what you said. Okay, what is it?
But my point is 2 hours. I'm sitting down here. Yeah. We bring persons who can speak to the issues. And I want to give you the time, and I'm going to challenge it again. And I don't interrupt when you're speaking, when whoever's speaking. You know why? Because I'm thinking all the time. TikTok, communication. Give them an opportunity to very quickly speak the 1 minute, the 2 minute, the 3 minutes. So I could be clipping these things and try to spoon feed it, drip feed it into the nation so that they could understand the issues.
Okay. Well,
and after 2 hours of speaking serious information, you know what goes viral? Sarah saying that Christopher Columbus discovered Trinidad and Tobago, and the whole country gone mad on discovered. So who were the first people? And it's a bacchanal post. And I'm thinking to myself, but we just love a bacchanal.
We do love
that spoke about. Okay. And we clipped that.
Marsha, all of this takes us to, all of this takes us closer to the truth. The truth is what you said has always existed. How do you convert? There are two things here. One, you have to be persistent, drip, make some mark. And two, you're involved in the politics too. So you're also involved in politics, is what I meant to say. It calls for converting that into political activism. All right, you have to sell those messages. And I don't want to go into specifics. I probably shouldn't get into all of that, but how you convert? Okay, let me say it openly. I took the opportunity to read the speech delivered by Mrs. Prasad Bisesa on Monday night. I read all of it, and I said she made some profound points, but it was left to the newspapers to write what they did. And I thought what she said was valued more than, but I can see social media break it out, meaning the vested interest. And I said so to somebody who's involved in communication. I said there were some really good points that emerged out of this. Now, if I'm a newspaper reporter, I write one story and so on. You can't blame the media in this case. But there are so many issues. Now, this is one case where I saw some value in the speech. I must say, a lot of speeches and presentations I look at, I don't see it resonating with the people. All of it, Marsha, all of the issues come back to what I call bread and butter. That is what Mr. Pandey campaigned on. Every road led to the quality of life issues. All this is why when I see Mr. Dr. Rowley hijack the issue into this coat of arms, I realize what he was, Mrs. Bisad says, had a wonderful line, a great communications line. She says, not the coat of arms, it's the boat of arms. I would have taken that and fleshed that out and talk about all these boats coming in and so on. And I thought that was a great line. I'm a fair-minded person. I thought it was how you take those things. It is not an easy thing. I tell people this, and I'm saying this openly. Campaigning against Dr. Rowley is not the same as campaigning against Mr. Manning. All right? It is radically different. You have to understand that Dr. Rowley takes no prisoners. Dr. Rowley has his own
Mr. Alleyne,
adversarial
do not,
stance.
but you're not, it's not about campaigning against him. We still have to choose somebody. So after we've campaigned, I keep saying to you, there is nobody that I can speak to who does not, who disagrees with you, even PNM people. That's why the voter turnout is low. I don't think we're at the stage of campaigning. I think the issue is, well, who we go vote for? And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think the issues have to be raised. We definitely need to raise the bread and butter issues. But I mean, nobody needs a statistic to tell us crime out of control. Nobody needs a statistic to tell us we have a mental health crisis. And maybe I'm in a bubble because I read and I think that what I'm reading, everybody else is reading. But persons know what they feel. They know the anxiety that they feel when they leave their house. They know the anxiety that they feel when they go to sleep at night.
So therefore,
they know the anxiety that they feel. So it's not far-fetched when you say that we have a mental health crisis. Crime is causing anxiety, right? You go to the grocery, you have to put a security plan in place. Where you're packing your groceries, how you're packing your groceries. Don't go to the groceries by yourself. Make sure your husband does. It is always a plan in place. We are living it. We are feeling it. We know that this present government has not served us well. We know, as I said, there is not a single person that you can walk around and talk to that isn't saying, boy, Trinidad in a mess. Who trying to sell their house? Who trying to migrate? Who trying? But then there is a but who we go vote for? And that's why I'm saying there's a sense of hopelessness because there's a general election soon to come. And every morning is a tit for tat. You're hearing about who bad talking who. No unity on the horizon between anybody. More third parties than we have foreign exchange. We know Rowley is a failure. But who?
Okay, well, I have thoughts on that. I prefer not to address it because it's a political matter. No, I'll talk a bit about it. It's a political matter, and the politicians in opposition to the PNM know what they have to do. There are obvious things. I started by making the point about Lloyd Best. To me, that remains a cornerstone of politics in the country. Now, the PNM has remained an urban Christian party, but they've stayed in office generally because of gerrymandered constituencies and ethnic and identity politics and so on. History has shown repeatedly that the rural Indian party cannot get into office unless they find themselves in coalition with other interests. And that remains a fact of life. Those coalitions have not sustained themselves because of the factional differences, the petty differences, and so on. And you've got to find a mechanism to hold all of that together. That has not worked. And that remains an enduring issue. And that calls for leadership, frankly. That calls for leadership. I thought Mr. Pandey made a spirited effort in and around the year 2000, and so on, both in his vision for the society and his vision for economic development with the Singaporean model. Right, the 1986 thing with the NAR, they didn't do enough work and it fractured almost immediately. And like I said, this is a country in which everybody feels a sense of alienation. Everybody's suspicious of the other person. You know, when the UNC says, for example, and I'm going to be controversial here, when the UNC says, well, we build all these schools and we build all these fire stations and police stations and so on, and Dr. Rowley say, yes, of course you build all of that to give your friends and family contracts and so on. That's why I'm saying campaigning against Mr. Dr. Rowley is different from campaigning against Mr. Manning. So he turns that into an ethnic issue. You build all these things to help your people and so on. How do you campaign against that? So what it requires is a new strategic outlook, Marsha. Just to complete the point. It requires a new strategic outlook. You can't go with the old hackneyed way of campaigning. We build this, we do this, we do the other. Dr. Rowley has introduced and he has marshaled a new campaign based on ethnicity, based on a sort of pride. You notice what he's systematically doing as we head to the election. The PAN thing, just let me talk a little about PAN. What he calls now, calling PAN the national instrument, PAN was invented in 1930. We lost the patent for PAN. We lost tuning and arranging PAN in terms of synchronizing all of it, um, Pan Factory, all of that. And as recently as 1994, on Independence Day, Mr. Manning as Prime Minister announced PAN as the national instrument. We forget all of that. But while we talk about PAN, national instrument, the steel band's still under breadfruit trees and near cemetery. And every year the taxpayer has to pay those PAN players $200. Right? Pan Trinbago, Mr. Pandey as Prime Minister gave 18 and a half acres of land in Macoya. That wasn't only for PAN headquarters in Marsha. That was to set up a PAN center. So when tourists came out of the airport, the brand new airport he had built, you come across there and there's a PAN concert and you're going to buy merchandise, what the Americans call merch. You buy this and that and the other, and you pose with Bugsy and you ask a few questions. You might end up in a little symposium or a little something because this is PAN. We're near to the airport. We let that rot. It remains an eyesore. Now we're going into the capital city where everybody's fleeing, by the way, because of crime and so on. And we have set this thing up. We have said, but what have we done with respect to steel bar? But a lot of people crowing, yes, PAN is our national instrument. What have we done? It is the identity politics. And let me make one more point on the identity politics. Again, highly controversial, especially coming from me. The Prime Minister announces it's now African Emancipation Day. But you know, Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Hilary Beckles, who spoke at Emancipation Day, spoke about the people in terms of emancipation, who we're talking about at the bottom of the economic ladder. Professor Kudju writes about that all the time. Where is Kafra Kamban and all of them now? Who campaigned on those issues? Those are the issues we're facing. Professor Kudju talks about it and many others. But we say, but it's about ethnic pride. We come with African Emancipation Day. But what does it really mean in a real sense? And that's when I say the society not dissecting these issues, we're not talking about it because Dr. Rowley has cemented the national agenda, the national narrative. And his thing is emancipation. And so we did not have a reparations committee for years. Ask Igore Ome. We didn't have a committee. So when others were talking, when in Jamaica they were talking, and Guyana and Barbados and other places they were talking, descendants of slave owners in this part of the world, especially Jamaica, which had tens of millions of slaves, they have been engaging in, you may call it reparations. They've come back. The family that owns the same British Guardian newspaper, they own slaves here. The Gladstone family in England, they've come and helped people in Grenada and in Jamaica and other things. We didn't have a committee. We didn't have a committee on reparations for years. Now we jump on it and we talk it. But the media not examining these things. Nobody asking these. Nobody saying anything. And again, let me say it one more time. Dr. Rowley controls the narrative, and nobody does research, and nobody speaks up.
29,000 votes in Diego Martin West. In 2020, I think he got about 9,000 votes, if so much. More persons do not vote in Diego Martin West than they do for Keith Rowley. So when you
across the country too. Across the country too.
So when you speak about campaigning against him, to me, you don't need to campaign against them because they don't vote for him.
We
need to campaign for people to come out to vote.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And you have to ask, and well, you're absolutely right. Years ago, I can't remember the year, the opposition called the PNM government a 27% government. If you look at the votes, they get an average of 27% of the votes. So they remain a minority government. And you're absolutely right. You leave them with the 27,000, don't try to convert them, and bring out a majority of voters. So if you don't do that, why?
That's what I think.
No, if you don't do that, ask why. Ask why are those people not inspired to come out and vote and support your cause? Refer to my earlier answer. They don't feel a sense of belonging. Everybody feels alienated in Trinidad and Tobago. Everybody feels they don't belong, the Indian owner all them business boy, the black man owns the public sector, the people up in the West, this. Nobody feels a sense of belonging in society. We are a very distrustful society. It requires leadership, sustained leadership. Those are the issues, in my respectful view, Marsha. But we're saying the same thing. We're saying the same thing. How do you harness 73% of the national population? Well, not everybody will come out. How do you harness 51% to come and support you?
Yeah, we don't even need 73. We don't even need 73. And I'm going to use Diego Martin West because the numbers are small. You have 29,000, right? So 19,000 aren't voting. If I get 10,000 to come out, that's 50%. A win, but 50%. A win.
Well, okay. So
how do you get them to come? Let me tell you. I would say, you see the PNM stronghold in Diego Martin, so I use in Diego Martin, right? Because I've studied the numbers, I know which street, I said, I'm not trying to get them to come out. I would walk Westmoreland and I would explain the numbers to them. And I would say, let me explain something to you. I am not trying to convert a PNM blind loyalist. I am trying to get you to come out because you say that the foreign exchange affects you. You say that you're the small business and it's the small business owners, not the 1%. You are the small business owner where crime affects you. The economy affects you. The ability to get foreign exchange affects you because you're not rich enough, but you're not poor enough where the middle income that is just dwindling away. I say all the time, the most vulnerable in society now is the middle income because we ain't poor enough to get grant and we ain't rich enough to be totally covered and sheltered from PNM incompetence. In my community, in my constituency, that would be some 16,000 persons. I would win by a landslide. He can't fit. Come out and vote.
But I know it is your show and you asking the question.
No, you speak. I'm gonna stay quiet. You speak.
No. I remember I'm a reporter too, so I just want to ask you one question. Although it's your show, why then are you in your own case, unable to get those number of voters to come out? What do you think is your peculiar issue? It may not be peculiar to that, but why weren't you able to do that?
So my peculiar issue, when I walk, so I can give you, and I'll be very brutally honest. I think I have been, right? So identity politics plays a part in it. I hear all the time, and nobody seems to want to believe me because they think it's a Kamla thing. But I've said it. I remember having a conversation, a 1 hour long conversation with Mrs. Prasad Bissessar, trying to figure out how I can sell her to Diego Martin West. Because if I can't sell her to Diego Martin West, whether they like me, they don't like me, it matters not. It matters not. They would say, Marsha, we love you, but we can't vote for UNC. We love you, we can't vote for Kamla. We love you, but.
Could I? I'm sorry to trip you, but I said
no.
One question.
If you could tell me, because that costed my husband real business. You know what it is to go up against the Prime Minister?
Yeah.
I mean, so I would love to have learned, know what went wrong.
No, because, and the issue is more endemic when you look at the fact that the same Mrs. Prasad Bisesa won 29 seats some years ago, and including, we must never forget this, places like Arima and Maloney and La Hawketta and so on. So while we talk about identity politics, we must also be honest and acknowledge that urban blacks, Afro Trinidadians, voted for her. All right, history proves that. So why in 2010 and why not in 2020 when you fought? What was the issue over a decade?
Well, I can only tell you what happened in Diego Martin, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that we say the Kamala mania. I don't know. I honestly,
So
coming from the West,
you have to break down what is Kamala mania.
Well, it was a wave apparently, and it was a whatever. I can tell you in Diego Martin. There was no Kamala mania. We voted for COP.
All right, but all of that came under the umbrella of the coalition.
Yes, so I can tell you, we voted COP. There was no Kamala mania in Diego Martin, and I can tell you, in 2023, I have voice notes to prove it. Person's message to say when they reached, they thought they were voting for NTA, but they couldn't find the NTA symbol, so they went home. They're not voting for UNC, and I thought, oh my goodness, it's me. I am the person who, in the rain, found a garbage truck to come and clear your debris. I am the person who found a backhoe to come and clear the flooding issue. It's me. It's me that you call every time you have a problem. Now I'm asking you to put me in a seat where I can really help you. And you telling me, well, you didn't see an NTA symbol, so you went home. Because you tell me, and I'm upset. They felt betrayed because I thought you were NTA because Gary was walking with me. I can't campaign on the day, so I just had to read the message and leave it right there. In Diego Martin, we didn't feel the Kamala mania. We heard COP. Okay. In Diego Martin, I can tell you, when we walked, persons were very upset that Gary had aligned himself with Kamala, and they say they can't vote for Gary no more because Gary is Kamala now. And that's why I say to you how I feel, because I know PNM, I know Keith Rowley. You don't have to sell to me that we're in a crisis. But I don't know how we're removing him.
Okay, I just want to point to two. I like to tell anecdotes. Let me point to two candidates the PNM has selected. I could go into more than two, but two may do the story. Dr. Yunus Ibrahim has been selected for Sawa Barataria, which has a large Islamic population. Remember, Kamal Muhammad represented there for a generation. Dr. Fuad Khan, for many years, the current incumbent is Saddam Hussein, all Islamic names, and so on. They've put this man who has deep roots in the community. His uncle is Wahid Ali, and he's a former president of the Markets Association, they own businesses and so on. Horses for courses, right? He has taken Rishi Sukai, former president of the Chaguanas Chamber, and put in Chaguanas East. Now, Chaguanas East is a diverse place. It includes enterprise and so on. And I'm saying, I ask a question, maybe rhetorically, but what is it from 2010 and 2020? Now, there's a kind of controversial line I'm going on, but I always call it the way I see it. In 2010, there was Jack Warner, Makandal Daga. By the way, I've always held the word of respect for Makandal Daga.
Pull your camera. Is it possible to pull your camera down just a little bit? Because your mouth is getting cut off. Okay. Perfect. Yes.
Right. So in 2010, there was Jack Warner, Makandal Daga, David Abdullah, Errol McLeod, and so on. Apart from Mr. Warner, they didn't have electoral support. Right? Mr. Warner remains a larger-than-life personality. He's been very successful, and so on. But you know what they gave? They gave a sense of comfort that, one of us involved in this thing that will protect our interest. And I go back again to make talk about Lloyd Best. I go back to cite these examples. Why do you think they put horses for courses? So they put somebody there, in Dr. Ibrahim, who is an Islamic person. So they identify. So he will nullify, neutralize some support, and then he will inspire others, and so on. And some people say, I may not like the party, but Dr. Abraham, I know you, and you from good roots, and so on. And then Rishi Sukai may carry something like that. And on the other side too, I'm not just trying to, I'm trying to say people identify with people to feel a sense of comfort with. And that was a major factor in 2010. When we look on the stage and we saw Makandal Daga, I was really inspired because as a young person, he inspired me in 1970, and I had a great amount of respect for him. I know David Abdullah didn't have electoral support, but I know he represented Labour and McLeod and Mr. Warner and so on. People like to see themselves in a political organization. And I don't know what Dr. So that to me is the key thought I'm making here. I just want to go off a little bit on that to see that Dr. Rowley has said that one of the things he's seeking to do is to create continuity in the party and so on. I forget the direct quotation, but something along that line. And I don't know what he is doing here, but in bringing somebody like Rishi Suka and Shogunas, in bringing Dr. Abraham there, maybe, I mean, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You may well bring them and put them on the back bench, but you may also bring them and get them meaningfully involved. It is time that, in a real sense, the power, the corridors of power represent Trinidad and Tobago in its real sense. Everybody who is involved. I say, but I mean, I shouldn't be. I don't see, apart from Mr. Haynes, I don't see a Rasta fella or a Rasta woman involved and because they have their own interests too. I don't see youth, Generation X and Generation Z and all them kinds of things. I have three daughters. I don't see, and when I talk to them, they don't see themselves involved in this, the Swifty generation and all them kinds of things. They don't see. You've got to represent the diversity of the country, and the challenge is greater for the opposition because the PNM has embedded gerrymandered constituencies and so on, and now they have incumbency. They're doing things, they're spending money in Maruga Tableland and so on and so forth. And even if you win without the diversity, you could possibly win. It would be difficult to manage. I used to run the state media on Maria Road, and I would sit there in my office and I'd watch up the security roundabout and see Dr. Rowley and thousands of people marching, going down. The Prime Minister's office was in St. Clair at that time, and so on. And we see a lot of people who voted for the UNC and the People's Partnership, that they were able, Dr. Rowley was able to arouse them quickly and to get them disaffected and so on. You've got people who represent, who are seen as leaders in their respective communities. And Trinidad and Tobago, and Mr. Pandey said it, and we are extremely diverse. You look different from me. I mean, you're better looking than me, but you look different from me. And we look different from the guy down the street. And we all, when I go to the gym, I see all kinds of guys and women, all ages, all kinds. We go to the grocery, the gas stations. We're extremely diverse as a society, and a political organization must be a safe house for everybody, a real large tent, and everybody, where everybody feels a sense of comfort. And I feel that is the huge challenge, Marsha. And you're right. I mean, you said that everybody understands the social and economic issues. You said that is true. So we understand that. But that now we're not converting that disaffection to electoral support. I think that's the point you're making. How we know.
Yeah. Well, Chris, and I mean, and I love reading and listening to you because I do want a break. Maybe I'm just not from this generation, but I do want a break from the shallow issues. It frustrates me at how easily I think Dr. Rowley gets away with distracting us.
Yes.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, this man, this government, I don't want it to be about him, but you've paid money. We put together a committee to discuss constitutional reform, and we're talking about the coat of arms.
And the
You
Constitutional
spent
Committee,
money,
yeah.
you've gotten a report. The report speaks about simple things, easy things. Fix the election date. You could do that any morning, right? Elect proportional representation. You could do that any morning. And to me, the fact that he has come out so openly to say he's not in support of some of these things, he did not even do what I thought would have been a rowdy move and spin it on the opposition, bring it to Parliament, have the opposition say they don't support it, and then throw your hand up in the air and say, well, you see, we tried. He didn't even do that, which shows to me just how empowered he feels.
Yeah, well,
he shut down basic things that we have been calling for forever. He shut it down and said, no fixed term, no proportional representation, no this, no that, no whatever. Well, what was the point? And nobody's thinking about it. Nobody seems to have a problem with it because we are talking about the coat of arms.
Let me say a few things in return. One, other governments have had majorities and could have introduced constitutional change, if not full constitutional change, could have implemented some changes. And that has not taken place. That's one. Two, Mrs. Prasad is correct in saying that was just political grandstanding on the eve of the election. We all know that was going nowhere. And three, the more things change, the more they remain the same. When he rejected proportional representation, I knew he's going to do that. Dr. Williams famously said, the commission of Sir Hugh Wood in 1974 had recommended proportional representation. And Dr. Williams said proportional representation is a dagger aimed at the heart of the PNM. What it really means is that what happened in Guyana. What he was saying in real sense is there are more Indians than there are non-Indian, and because proportional representation is the cumulative number of votes. So the PNM would have stayed out of office, and the anti-PNM party, which was the DLP then, or successor parties, would have remained in government. So that is very clear. They were never going to that. But while all that is happening, we're talking about constitutional reform, but we're destroying the existing institutions. All Ralph Maraj writes about it consistently, and I want to give him credit for that. But all our independent institutions, name one, the procurement regulator failing to deliver her report, the Integrity Commission, he attacked the chairman of the Integrity Commission and fired look at everyone. They want to disband the Statutory Authority Commission recently. And outside of that, look at the president of the Industrial Court, a lady named Deborah Thomas Felix, an outstanding jurist in this country. She gave a few judgments that came across as pro-labor. The Chamber of Commerce held a seminar, and then they said she's anti-business and pro-labor. They made a complaint to the Prime Minister, and the president of the Industrial Court is appointed by the president, which is a weird thing. And they didn't appoint her, and they appoint somebody else. There's a the union make a little noise and so on, but that is madness. So the one area where workers had some comfort and so on, and she was not pro-labor. This is a lady the ILO, the International Labour Organization, has a deep respect for. She should be a national asset. All right? You kick her out. So while we're doing that and we're subverting and destroying and decimating our institution, at the same breath, we want to come and talk about constitutional reform and so on. People don't buy it. People don't buy it. We're not going to get constitutional reform, not for a long time. And we should have fixed date for election, 2 terms for a prime minister. I'm strong in favor of those things and some of the other measures that, but still, the PNM promised us whistleblower legislation. Remember, we still don't have that. The procurement legislation has been gutted out. A lot of credit to Afra Raymond for speaking up on that issue. You see, I like to give credit when people speak out, and Afra Raymond has spoken out consistently, and full credit to him and the others who have done that. And so the procurement regulator, she hasn't even delivered a report. So all of those institutions, we're losing them in this society. And on the one hand, how this committee was set up, remember, let's go back a little bit. Mr. Pandey died at the start of January, and everybody said, oh, God, he fought for constitutional reform. Oh, God. And we all felt thing, and we said, that must be his legacy. He must have constitutional reform. And the killer Pandey started talking things. So the Prime Minister jumped on that, knowing it's an election yet, set up a committee. He calls it an independent committee, but it's chaired by a former PNM member of parliament. Right? Barry Sinan was member of parliament for San Fernando West, and then he became PNM speaker, and then they put one or two other people there on the committee. So it was always a pro PNM committee. And Marsha, it was really going nowhere. We all knew that it was going nowhere. Yeah. I saw Trevor Sudama writing on that in the papers today. You may want to bring him on as a guest, and I would want to listen to his thoughts on constitutional reform and so on, because he's a long-standing politician. He's been around a long time, and he would have a lot of thoughts he could share with society.
I'm writing it down. I did not read it. I did not see it.
It's in Newsday today. It's in Newsday today.
Yeah. Okay. I'm writing it down to remember. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you know I'm on vacation, so I'm taking time out from my children's pool time to do this.
Okay. Well, I have taken time out of my gym today, so
and so we all sacrifice, hoping, pushing, fighting for a better Trinidad and Tobago. We have just about 10 more minutes. You've actually been with me for about an hour now.
Wow.
Yes, so our hour is coming to an end. But I know that there are a lot of bread and butter issues that you would have prepared to speak on. And I kind of took that over because, I two things got me really upset just before coming here. The issue with the lady, she had seen she actually went to the magistrate to try to have her husband removed from the property because she's paying rent and all of that and whatever. And I just felt to myself, this is just so incredibly frustrating. On the ground, when you deal with it on the ground, and so many people having these challenges on the ground. And then you see the government putting up these, media releases and having all these press conferences, and on the ground is not the same as what we are hearing. It's just, so that had me frustrated. And then, of course, seeing somebody sent me a video with somebody talking about, Power 102 and Marsha and her show and whatever, and it's just, we are a nation of bacchanal. Everybody wants bacchanal. It's just like we have issues, we have real issues to be discussing, to be spending our time with. I am here trying to give a platform so that issues can be discussed, and you're just interested in bacchanal.
Well, okay, let me just say this one, as someone who's been in the media a long time, and let me use the Trinidadian phrase, you can't play mass and trade powder. I have been in a lot of controversies, and I just dust it off. And I always say what people think about me is none of my business. But you are in the throes of not only media, but in politics. So people come at you. So, far from me to give you advice, but that's one of the...
but it was just that, as I say to persons all the time, and so, some persons will come and say, Marsha, you need to be, why don't you speak quietly and whatnot? And then I would ask, did you see my Senate presentation on the Sexual Offences Act? No. Did you see my Senate presentation on the Bail Amendment Act? No. And then I would name certain other videos that I know didn't go anywhere because they were very quiet and controlled and gave facts and numbers. They said no. I said, don't you think it's a bit coincidental that the one that you saw is the one where I was apparently ranting and raving? So you have to ask yourself, why is it that those are the ones that seem to go viral and the ones filled with all the data, the ones where I'm quiet, I'm presenting, you've never seen?
Well, the successful podcasts in the US are not only Howard Stern, but some of the names escape me, who get big contracts, by the way, and they attract commercial dollars. There are quite a lot of them. I wish their names I could easily recall them. But they call them shock jocks in that they are radical, they may be conservative or liberal, and you're entitled to have your politics. That is you're entitled to be opinionated is your program. But there will always be people who see things differently. My own thoughts, you haven't asked me for it, but briefly, my own thoughts is that you just continue to do what you're saying, but always be based on fact, don't stray from fact. So what I'm saying is, if, for example, you've taken on an issue with malnutrition. So the figures show, in fact, malnutrition is a serious issue. Poverty, 1 in 4 is considered very poor, and 5% is considered indigent, which means they really can't put food on the table. It is as bad as that. We have a huge poverty crisis in this country. Over the last decade, public officers have gotten 4% increase. Price of fuel alone has gone up 5 times. You know what I used to do, and maybe it's something you could do, and I'm saying this publicly. I used to get a grocer to send me, what's the name of the system where you could trace the prices. It escapes me now. A broad spreadsheet um, system, and I would say, let's say I want to trace corned beef. Corned beef in 2015 was this. Now we are it's the same size and same brand, or
Yeah.
rice, or flour, or dal, or whatever it is you want, and see how the prices went up. Now, there was a huge change in the COVID years because of the cost of transport
Yeah.
and so on. But the prices have gone up, they have not gone down. They continue to go up. People, like I said, in the public sector, there's a virtual, they got 4%, while cost of transportation has gone up, cost of accommodation has gone up, cost of everything has gone up, right? School books. We have a phenomenon now in this country, Marsha, with mothers, and I'm not condoning it wrong, but the stealing school books is not something we ought to be proud of. But school books are expensive. I talk to mothers who have school-age children, and they talk about massive bills. They can't afford school. The minister of finance said in his last budget that they're going to standardize school books. School books were standardized in the prime ministership of Mr. Pandey under the Minister of Education then, Alleyne, and I went and read the Hansard on that the other day. And then when Mr. Manning came back as Prime Minister, he changed that. Mr. Pandey famously said that they changed one or two words and one or two sentences, and then they're selling it again because it's a racket. He said that has to stop, and he standardized it. In his last budget, Mr. Imbut said, I'm going to standardize it. And everybody said, yeah, but Mr. Pandey had done that years ago. He has not done that. So the cost of school books very expensive. School opening next week. People nobody holding to account the Minister of Finance. What about the standardized school books? They're given grants. How much are these grants? How far are they reaching? Because the school feeding program is not as effective. People have to carry lunches and so on. This whole thing of going to school is a huge cost. But you don't open the daily papers and see that investigation, Marsha. You don't see that. And if I was still in the working media, I would have done, or had my colleagues and I, and go and find out the cost of an average school child going to school, how much it would cost, how much that book bag in terms of books would cost, how much transportation would cost, how much lunch would cost, and other things, and find out an average of what that person's family is earning. Those are the issues, and newspapers want to know why sales are not going up, and sales are plunging because they're not dealing with those. And when I talk about bread and butter issues, that's a classic example of what I mean. All right? School books are huge crisis. Mothers being forced, and I'm not condoning it, but mothers are stealing in order to assist their children in their education.
Mr.
I don't
Ali,
know.
I cannot believe our time is up. It has gone really quickly. I thank you so much. I'm gonna have to bring you back on because I know that you have a wealth of knowledge that I want Trinidad to hear. Thank you so much.
Thank you
And
for
guys,
having
see you
me. Thank
next
you,
week
Marsha.
Thursday.
Best wishes to you and your listeners and viewers. Thank you and good evening.